Welcome everyone to our session on storytelling. So good to see everyone today. I'm going to go ahead and get my deck up here so we can see what we got planned. All right. So this is part of our series. It's actually the conclusion of our series on our book talks, our book, The Five Conversations That Change Everything. This is now the fifth conversation, storytelling conversation. And so that's what we're going to focus on here. How do we inspire people through storytelling and making our purpose relatable? So that's what we have planned. Let me show you a little outline here. We are going to start by thinking a little bit about what makes for a good story. I hope you guys brought a story, have some ideas of stories, because we're going to work through one. So we want you to pick one that you might want to tell. I'm going to introduce you to the four foundations of storytelling. Then we're going to do a practice activity where you get a chance to develop and maybe share your story. And then we're going to do some discussion. And that is going to take us all the way through our time, probably more time than we have, but we're going to keep it on track here. So any questions or anything as we get started? So just to see. Just making sense? Good. Okay. We're going to start. What I'd like you to do with a little reflection here, what I'd like you to do is start by just thinking about a time recently when you heard a story, or any time where you heard someone tell a powerful story about their own personal life, something that you thought was engaging or memorable. What made it memorable for you, right? Think a little bit about what that was, or how did they organize the story to kind of keep you engaged? And what aspects in general do you think make for good storytelling? What are some of those things that are important? So just take on, so on one hand, think a little bit about recent times or any times when you've heard stories and kind of what made it memorable. How did you think they organized it, and what are some of those good things? And then also consider a challenging experience in your own life that you'd like to tell a story about. Because we want to have something that you guys can work with through this session. So I also want you to kind of come up with, it doesn't have to be the perfect thing or the right thing, just anything that we can use to tell a story. Maybe something you've already told before, but we're going to kind of refine it through the technique. So does that make sense? Recent time you heard a story that you thought was compelling, what made it compelling? Your own possible story or challenge that you have. Okay. I'm just hearing silence, and I cannot see any responses. Okay, so we're going to do some quick breakouts. And so what I'm going to have you guys do in the breakouts is discuss with your partner, again, what are those aspects that make for good storytelling, and maybe even some examples of stories you've heard from others. And also what are just some ideas you might have, just so you have something ready to go around your own potential challenging experience you want to build a story around, or something you already have a story that you want to refine. So hopefully you guys have a story for yourself that you can work with for this session. So even the one you had, Natalie, could be a great one to refine through this process. So the four that we're going to look at here is a challenge, kind of something that disrupted your life is kind of the foundation, like picking a moment. Then we're going to think about what are those choices we were faced with in that immediate challenge that we had to deal with, and then what was the outcome? Like, so given that we had this challenge, we had these choices, what was the result? And then finally, how does that relate to the bigger purpose and kind of overall, your priorities and principles. So kind of being able to make bigger meaning from that specific moment. Okay, so what I'm going to do is walk through each of these individually. And as I walk through them, I'm going to invite you to take a minute and just make some notes to yourself. So if you have a kind of challenge already, that was sort of, hopefully you have something in mind that we can work with in the session. And so as I explain each of these, I'm going to kind of give you recommendations. And then I want you to just make some notes to yourself about how you would apply your story to these foundations. And then we're going to do another breakout where you get a chance to practice with a colleague and get some feedback on it. Okay, so we're going to start with challenge. Now, we talk about challenge. We're looking for, sorry, my slides are acting weird. Okay. So we're thinking about a challenge, and this is something that you faced, right? Not like, oh, my friend had this challenge, and not just like a general, like, oh, global warming or whatever the broad issues are, like something you faced directly, right? And typically it's something that was unexpected or surprising, some kind of disruption from your normal life. And it's about the moment, right? So it's sometimes hard. This is probably the hardest part of storytelling, is finding that moment. We might have general, like, oh my gosh, these things and these broad abstractions. So how do we find like this time when, this moment when? and really trying to bring the listener in by showing and not telling, right? So like take us to that to the very moment. I was sitting in the office. This, the lights were this color. I could see out the window. These things were happening. I could feel, the air conditioner blowing on me. You want to bring us in, showing us what's going on in the moment. That's what makes compelling is like I can picture it. I can feel like I'm there with you in it. So we want to start with a challenge. And so thinking about what are those like maybe a sudden loss or some kind of surprising event, setbacks, obstacles. Okay, is this making sense? So what I like you guys to do just right now, I'm going to give you like a minute. Just make some notes about the challenge and really focus on that moment. What was going on in the moment, and maybe just a few little things that might signal that experience, like what you noticed, either what you saw or what you could hear, maybe the smells, or that if it's anything that you could that brings alive from the experience. Okay, so on your own, I'm gonna give you a minute to just make some notes, and then we'll go on to the next step. But this is prepping us for when you actually get a chance to share it. Okay. Okay, so hopefully you have at least a few kind of notes about that moment and the experience, what was happening, what was that challenge, and you can kind of take us into it. Now, the next step is we're going to think about what were the choices. You had this setback, you just found out the shocking news, something just happened that totally threw you off. Okay, what were the choices you had to make, right? What could you, like, I could just give up, or I could go this way. I could choose. What were those options that you had? Again, going back to that moment, what were the things that you could do, and try to outline again, hopefully more than one, this or that, or maybe this third thing. And also, what were the trade-offs and what were the stakes, right? This is also helps to make the story compelling is like, what's at risk for this? Like, oh, if I wasn't able to succeed, all these other problems would happen. Or if I wasn't able to find a solution, then all my plans would have fallen apart, right? So like, what was the big deal behind it, for example? And also, eventually, you want to share like, what did you decide and why, right? So you want to set up like, here's the challenge, here are the options, and here are the stakes. Like if I didn't make the right choice, something was big was going to happen, and then I decided on this, and maybe maybe I didn't have a good reason. It just my gut said I got to try this thing. I don't know what it is, but whatever it was for you, what kind of led you to why you did it, and again, try to bring us to that moment, right? It doesn't have to be the same one. It could be like the next day I woke up and I just had an episphany and I realized that I couldn't continue with this career choice because I just knew I had to go, be an artist, and I just couldn't give you a rational reason. But in my inside, I could just, when I looked outside, I could just see this perfect image of the painting I was going to start painting. You know what I'm saying? So again, we're trying to like bring us back into that moment, and to make it compelling about the choice you made. Okay. So again, I'm going to give you a minute on your own just to make some notes about what were a few of the options you had and what were the trade-offs and the stakes, and then what did you ultimately do, and kind of give us that moment, bring us into that moment in time. Go ahead. Okay, hopefully you have some ideas around choice. Now we're going to get into the outcome. So we're thinking here about what were the results of the decision and kind of the impacts of it, right? So again, we had the challenge, we had the choices, we made the decision, and then what was the result, right? And maybe even like, was it what I expected? Was it not what I was expected? And also talk a little bit about maybe the repercussions, or maybe even how you felt or what you learned, right? So I quit my job, and then now I have a whole studio, and I can see my paintings, and you can see, and I've just last week I was at a gallery, and I mean there was a line of people out the door or whatever. Like I'm making things up here, but the point is we want to then have like what was the moment of the outcome, right? Give us an emblematic sense of like, after deciding on this new approach, everything worked totally different. Once I decided I was gonna do this, then my whole world changed. Well, and what was that? What's an example? I'm talking very generally, but hopefully that makes sense for your story. So give us again the outcome. Okay, hopefully you have some ideas, because we need to get to our activity. So what we're going to do is now that you've at least have some sketched out of the framework, we're going to give you a chance to practice. So again, you should have picked an experience. We should have sketched out kind of those 4 foundations. We're not going to have time to do 2. So we're going to do just 1 round. We're going to put you back into breakouts. You need to pick who's going to be role A, who's going to be role B. Role A is going to be the storyteller who's going to be applying the 4 foundations, or trying to use these techniques, and then B is going to be the listener, and they're really just to listen, but they're going to be trying to hear how well you're applying those techniques, how well you really showed the moments, how you talked about challenge, choice, outcomes. We're going to just keep it really short. The idea that was you can tell these stories in like 3 minutes, so keep it concise. And time B, keep track of time. So that's important as well because it's hard as a storyteller to focus on that. So the one who's listening, watch time and do cut them off. Say, hey, we're over time or you're at 3 minutes, just so you know, because it's hard to tell as a storyteller. So keep track of time. And then once you've done the story, then just do a quick feedback. So partner B will share like, oh, it seemed like you did a great job on challenge, but somehow your choices weren't there or whatever. Give some feedback on it. And then we'll come back and discuss. Okay. And we'll give you about 10 minutes for that because that is barely the time we have for today. So makes sense? Partner A, partner B. A is sharing, B is listening and giving feedback. Focus on 3-minute stories. Come back ready to share how it went. Kate, can you get the breakouts? Yeah. So we're at our time today, but this is also just kind of like an introduction to the work that we're doing. And so we're going to look to the next year to have a little bit more programs like this and maybe even more ongoing, more time. To your point, Constantine, we can get into the weeds. And it also relates to our platform, Simsola, where we can actually give you a chance to practice. So you guys were practicing with a colleague here, but we have a simulation center set up so that you could practice, telling stories to like an AI character that'll give you feedback and give you recommendations. So a lot of interesting things to explore here. And the book as well goes into more detail around this. So definitely check that out. But we're going to try to do more programming like this. So I definitely invite you guys back. We'll keep you on the list, and I would love to have you, do a deeper dive with us on some of these topics because I think they're I'm very, very excited about it, obviously. And so it's lovely to hear how this is helpful for you guys. So I'm just aware of our time. I'm trying to wrap us up, but happy if there's any other questions or comments, as we finish.
I'll send
Anyone,
all
Tammy,
of you
Kate,
a
anyone?
copy of the book if you don't have it already. I'll send it out.
Great.
Just uh, I have your sign up, so I'll email you the Kindle version as a